Did you ever snoop through your parents' things as a child and absolutely regret what you found to this day? What was it and did they ever find out? NSFW. I found typed letters from my dad to my mom in my mom's room. They had been divorced for a couple years at that time and the letter said some pretty horrible things about her and about how we were being raised. I'm assuming she was keeping them in case she needed them in court. Or possibly to remember what an asshole he was in case she ever felt herself backsliding. After my dad passed away, I searched through the browser history on his computer. Tons of porn and websites for ordering black market Viagra. I didn't personally regret finding it, but I know my mom would have, so I deleted the history and never told her. Weird but wholesome. My parents got divorced when my dad was caught cheating on my mom. After the divorce I went to visit my dad in LA when I was about 13. I decided to snoop through his bin of floppy disks and found a very long story he had typed out during the divorce. In it he describes graphic sexual acts with the new woman. How his life would be easier if my mom was to suddenly drop dead. Specifically that he would fantasize about the police showing up at his door to tell him my mom was killed in a car accident. I also learned how his AOL name that he'd been using for years is actually just an inside joke between him and his now wife about the length of his dick. He still uses that name to this day. He did find out that I saw it, and he explained that at the time of the divorce he was seeing a therapist who told him to write the story. I think it was meant for the therapist to read and gain some insight into what my dad was going through. What was the AOL name? Microsoft. Zing. I ended up finding a quite kinky vibrator/dildo in my grandma's possession. That was 6 years ago, but I still have the image seared into my mind. I found a riding crop in my parents' wardrobe. I was like, when the fuck did we get a horse? BUMPADDLE. For British eyes only. I found a beer opener that was shaped like a huge black penis. I put it back but then years later my younger sister found it and asked them what it was. Their faces were red while I tried not to laugh. Dear God. I remember being a kid and my parents watching a fair amount of shows and movies with graphic sex in it, and I would always play dumb and pretend to have no idea what was going on. Maybe look away or hide under the table or something. But when my sister started to learn, I then got dragged into all the embarrassing conversations. It was awful. I found my letters to Santa hidden in my parents' socks. In a thread of porn, dildos, and other NSFW things. Your story is cute and heartwarming. Well thank you. It was a heartbreaking moment though. Wait no. A jumbo box of condoms, a small vibrator, a plethora of porn DVDs, and an unlabeled VHS tape. I regret looking at the VHS. It was porn. Of them. You took a risk. 50/50 could have been a sweet find or horrible scarring homemade porn. Sorry for your mental scarring. Scrudiness porn. Found some old nudes of my mom when I was like 11. I didn't realize it was her at first. Man, I have never lost a boner faster. I hate to ask, but at what point did you realize? I'd say about a minute in. I flipped it over and there was a note on the back. It was an artsy wide-angle shot so it wasn't obviously her. What happened in that minute between discovering the photo and flipping it over? Let's just say I'm not proud of it. Damn, you just took this mom and son shit to another level. That's when he broke his arms on purpose. The Joy of Sex book, illustrated. Some of those hand-drawn pictures. Oh no, my poor innocent childhood brain. I also found this book when I was a kid. Instead of being disturbed, it became my secret porn. I spent a lot of time in closets as a child. My favorite place to be, in the back of our cedar closet. I found the Santa suit, wig and beard. Childhood ended. Not NSFW, but damn. Renting is for chumps. Your dad was smart enough to buy it and invest in something he could wear every year lol. I found my uncle's suicide note which revealed a lot of shit about my family I didn't want to know when I was like 11. Damn man, that can be some traumatizing shit. Kind of, but I read it and didn't say anything to my mum and then pretended I'd only just found it for the first time when I was around 13 and asked her about it then. So really I had a few years to slowly process what it meant before getting the answers I needed. What did she say? Jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Me and my brother found a stack of about 50 Playboys in my dad's closet when I was 13. It was awesome for about a year till he discovered we had been messing with them and got rid of them. Then we were all out of porn again, but it was a very educational year. Found a letter about a kid my mum gave up for adoption when she was 18. Weird to think my mum had a whole different life before I came along when she was 27. My sister snooped in my mom's journal when she was about 13 and found that my mom had also had a child at 18 that she gave up for adoption. I found out by snooping through my sister's diary. Double snoop scoop. Love it. Found my mom's Hitachi and played with the new microphone. Then I found out it vibrated and started massaging my face and neck. Fuck. I was going through my dad's hockey bag. Found his cup. Thought it was a face mask. It wasn't till I saw the horrified look on my parents' face that I realized it's not for your face. Nobody cared who I was until I put on the mask. Are you cock and balls man? My mom was passed out drunk. Her boyfriend at the time told me to go get the keys from under her pillow. There were no keys, but there was a large vibrator. I was about 12. Those situations change you. Yeah, no? My dad's journal from before I was born. He was so incredibly depressed. He talked about how my older sister cried on her way to kindergarten, and it was the first time he'd been able to relate to her in years. Totally broke my heart. I've never told him though. That was definitely not meant for me to read. When I was a kid there were no such thing as cell phones and we didn't have magazines, so going to the bathroom was pretty boring. One way I used to entertain myself was by playing with a round piece of rubber that sat in the medicine cabinet. I would poke it, stretch it, spin it on my finger. Wasn't until several years later during sex ed that it suddenly dawned on me that I had been playing with my mother's diaphragm that whole time. Her what? Her diaphragm. Yeah, but what is it? Basically a little rubber cup a woman sticks up her vagina to trap sperm. Exactly. Trust this guy. Oh my god. Yes, I was 8. Wasn't really snooping through my parents' stuff, but our family photo albums, particularly with mine and my siblings as babies. First, I got to my brother's. It was so colorful and bright and filled with notes written by my mom. Same with my little sisters. Then I got to mine. It was boring to say the least. Just plain pictures with no notes or stickers or whatsoever. Then I got to the last page. I remember the exact verbatim of what I read in this small piece of blue sticky paper written by my mom. Is there any more I can say? No. Because we really wanted a baby girl. An 8-year-old boy bald that day. How do you write that in the fucking family photo album like you or someone else isn't gonna see it? I'm sorry, Hop. This one stings. Hope you're doing okay now. My mother left her diary open once. It was a few years after my father died, and I read just the one entry on the open page. She was sad that I had been having dreams of him comforting me, and wrote that she hadn't dreamed of him once. It made me feel guilty for years. I never told her. My therapist said it was deliberate. What do you mean deliberate? As in your mother wanted you to read that, and this was the way she could tell you how she truly felt? Yes. She was jealous and wanted me to feel bad. She's something. Okay. So it's not like a look. I can't tell you, but I want you to know. It's basically fuck you. Sat. Hope you're alright. Thanks. A bright purple dildo, and that's the last time I went in my father's closet. I bet he nicknamed it Barney. Please no. I found my paranoid schizophrenic father's diary full of rants, including him accusing my mother of adultery and her denials. It was just so sad and messed up. A really awful peek inside his mind. I knew he was sick, but to get that honest a look inside was far too much for a 10-year-old. I admitted to my mother what I found. When I went back to look at the notebook another time, I saw she dripped out all the pages. We'd run away from him years before. I have no idea why she kept the thing. Probably forecourt if needed. I found my mom's big purple dildo and touched it thinking it was something else. Did you think it was her big lavender dildo? I wasn't snooping. but when I was about 14 I was helping mom do laundry like I usually did on Saturdays when I was a kid. I went to put away my dad's shirts and found a Costco size box of condoms. It was nearly full. On its own that didn't bother me, I knew what sex was and figured my parents did it. The troublesome bit was the following Saturday when I was helping with laundry and saw 3 condoms in the drawer instead of 24. I mean, damn guys, it's been a week. Dang, they are animals. You'd be surprised. Some people nut and throw on a new sock and keep going in the same session. You're telling me you guys changed socks? Man. When I was in middle school, my dad had a box at the top of his bedroom closet filled with hardcore porn on VHS. Later, when my folks weren't home, I watched a bunch of it with my friends. It made me very popular. No regrets. The kid with the porn rules the hormone-crazed boys. After my dad passed away I found some letters sent to him from his family that dated 40 years ago requesting him to marry his distant cousin so they can keep the family blood pure. He was 32 and she was 11. Side note, Middle Easterns have this weird thing with marrying underage girls who also are your distant/close cousins. I found other letters from his relatives saying that they are cutting ties from him because he refused to marry and that he is no longer welcomed in the country. They had the power to blacklist him. My dad ran away shortly after the first letter that I mentioned and met my mom, who's Bulgarian, who's also 2 years younger than him, and got married. Honestly, I'm just proud of him. That's so fucked up and sad. Your dad sounds awesome, though. When I was little I always liked going in my parents' closet. Their closet is above the garage, so it is massive. There aren't any windows, so I liked going there during the day, to be in the dark. They kept a lot of random stuff at the very back, so I always thought it was fun to go through. It wasn't until it got around Christmas time when my parents said I was not allowed to go in their closet anymore, which naturally made me want to go in there even more. I waited until they were distracted with something and went in. I went to the very back where I like to explore and found a bunch of wrapped Christmas presents. A few weeks later I got those same presents but from Santa. This really confused me as an 8-year-old. Why would Santa bring the gifts early just to have to come back later to out them out on Christmas Eve? I guess it must make it easier and definitely would make the sleigh lighter. Yeah, that makes sense. Can't be doing all that gifting all in one night. Plus it explains why your parents left cookies and milk out for him. They had an established relationship from when he dropped stuff off earlier in the year. You nailed it, mate. Not as a child, but as an adult, and it's not gonna be NSFW. Just sad. I was spending a few days over to my mom's house in the countryside, and she was cleaning up some of her stuff. I stumbled upon a diary that dated back to 1992, when I was barely a year old. I was curious, so I asked her if I could read it. She said yes, but warned me that I might not like what she had written in it at the time. I went ahead and read it anyway, and what I learned was that my father never cared much for me, even back then. He'd still do drugs and smoke pot with me in the next room, and let mom pay for everything pertaining to my needs. I brought the diary to my mom, and asked her if my father ever loved me at all. Her diary still in my hand. She sat me down and confessed that when she was pregnant with me, she knew she wanted to have me, but my father never did. What I regret is having the absolute certainty that one of my parents never did love me. Before, there was always a sliver of hope, but now, I know my father never really loved me. What I regret is having the absolute certainty that one of my parents never did love me. Before, there was always a sliver of hope, but now, I know my father never really loved me. In the long run, particularly for understanding and finding relationships, this pain will be so useful to you. Don't go chasing or romanticizing or distorting in some way what your father gave/didn't give you. Just accept it as it is. Heroin needle, crack pipe. I was 5 or 6. Found my dad's cocaine when I was about the same age.